Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the class of African literature. So I hope you all are good and safe in your homes. So today we are going to discuss about the textual analysis of Things Fall Apart. Things Fall Apart is as we have already discussed about in many topics, but we didn't go for textual analysis. So in the coming lectures and in this lecture we'll be doing this textual analysis like chapter wise. There are almost 25 chapters or 28 chapters of this work, and it is written by Chinua Achebe, and it is probably the most authentic narrative ever written about the life in Nigeria and at the turn of the 20th century. So yeah, it was first published in 1958, and there are many copies that this work is sold throughout the world. There are many translations about it, and because it has depicted the history of the Nigeria and parallel to the present life of the Nigeria, and it also Chinua Achebe, as we have already discussed, that he tried to answer those narratives who were written against the African people or African society. So this work was basically the answer to those work like the Empire Writes Back. This was that kind of work in which he wanted to clear out the things. He wanted to give awareness to the people all over the world, that what exactly happened to the people, and what kind of civilization they had before this colonization. So the novel takes its title from the verse in the poem The Second Coming, written by the W.B. Yeats, an Irish poet and essayist and dramatist. So the significance of the title already discussed in previous lectures. So what is the literary purpose? When Things Fall Apart was first published, Achebe announced that one of his purpose was to present a complex, dynamic society to a Western audience who perceived African society as primitive, simple and backward. So unless Africans could tell their side of their story, Achebe believed that the African experience would forever be mistold, even by such well-meaning authors as Joyce Carey in Mr. Johnson. Carey worked in Nigeria as a colonial administrator and was sympathetic to Western writers, to Nigerian people. So yet Achebe feels that Carey, along with other Western writers such as Joseph Conrad, they misunderstood Africa. Many European writers have presented the continent as a dark place inhabited by the people within with primitive minds, it was also called also known as a place, godless place. So Achebe considers this reductionist portrayal of Africa racist. He points to Conrad, who wrought against imperialism, but reduced Africans to mysterious, animalistic and exotic others with capital O, or in inverted commas, the others, all the others. In an interview, Achebe explained that his anger about the inaccurate portrayal of the African culture by the white colonial writers doesn't imply that students shouldn't read works by Conrad or Carey. On the contrary, he urges students to read such works in order to better understand the racism of the colonial era. So while writing this, he also kept his own Nigerian people in mind as an audience. And in Things Fall Apart, The Europeans' understanding of Africa is particularly exemplified in two characters, the Reverend James Smith and the unnamed district commissioner. Mr. Smith sees no need to compromise on unquestionable religious doctrines or practices, even during the introduction to a society very different from his own. He simply doesn't recognize any benefit for allowing the Nigerians to retain elements of their heritage. So the district commissioner, on the other hand, he prides himself on being a student of primitive customs and sees himself as a benevolent leader who has only the best intentions for pacifying the primitive tribes and bringing them into the modern era. Both men would express surprise if anyone suggested to them that their European values may not be entirely appropriate for these societies. So the commissioner's plan for briefly treating the story of Congo illustrates the inclination towards Western simplification and essentialization of African culture. To counter this inclination, Achebe brings to life an African culture with a religion, government, a system of money, and an artistic tradition as well as judicial system. So, while technologically unsophisticated, the Ebo culture is revealed to the reader as remarkably complex. Furthermore, Things Fall Apart ironically reverses the style of novels by such writers as Conrad and Carey, who created flat and stereotypical African characters. Instead, Achebe stereotypes the white colonialist as rigid, most with imperialist intentions, whereas the Ebos are highly individual, many of them open to new ideas. So, Achebe is not presenting Ebo culture as faultless and idyllic. Ebo would contest such a romantic portrayal of his Nebo, of his native people. Like in fact, many Western writers who wrote about colonialism were opposed to imperialism, but were romantic in their portrayal of noble savages, like primitive and animalistic, yet uncorrupted and innocent. So, the opposition to imperialism that such authors voiced often rested on the notion that an advanced African society corrupts and destroys the non-African world. Achebe regards this notion as an unacceptable argument as well as myth. The Ebos were not noble savages, and although the Ebo word was eventually destroyed, the indigenous culture was never an idyllic heaven even before the arrival of the white colonialist. So, in Things Fall Apart, Achebe depicts negative as well as the positive elements of Ebo culture, and he is sometimes as critical of his own people as he is of the colonizers. So, Achebe has been a major figure worldwide in literary movement to define and to describe the African experience. Other post-colonial writers in this movement include Leopold Revoil Soenka, M.S. Azor, Ugwa Deong. There are others. So, these writers they not only confront a multi-ethnic perspective of history and truth, but they also challenge the readers to re-examine themselves in this complex and evolving world. So, this work was the groundbreaking work, and Achebe's role in making modern African literature a part of the world cannot be understated. So, that was basically the literary purpose behind writing this work. Now, move on to the chapter-wise analysis of this work. In this chapter, Achebe reveals the following aspects of Ebo culture, like legends and traditions, the fight with the spirit of the void by the founder of their village, then symbols of honor, different titles, then indicators of wealth like yams and cowries, crop of yam, marriage customs, more than one wife, having more than one wife show their status in the society. Then the reckoning of time, markets, and a week of 4 days. Then social rituals, there are many like kola nuts, alligator pepper, chalk, small chalk, and proverbs. Music, entertainment, food, and drink. And in the music, there was drum beating especially. So, in his goal to demonstrate the complexity and sophistication of Ebo society, Achebe gradually introduces these details when they are relevant to the story. So, chapter 1, it describes a Conco's principal accomplishments that establishes important position in Igbo society. These details alone provide insight into a Conco's character and motivation. So, driving himself toward tribal success and recognition, he is trying to bury the unending shame that he feels regarding the faults and failures of his late father Yunoka. Essentially, a Congo exhibits the qualities of manhood in Igbo society. So, familiar with the Western literature and its traditional forms, Achebe structures Things Fall Apart in the tradition of a great tragedy, with the stories centered around a Conco, a tragic hero. Like Aristotle defined the tragic hero as a character who is superior and noble, one who demonstrates great courage and perseverance, but is undone because of a tragic personal flaw in his character. So, in this chapter, Achebe sets up Okonkwo as a man much respected for his considerable achievements and noble virtues, key qualities of a tragic hero. Okonkwo's tragic flaw is his obsession with manliness. His fear of looking weak, like his father, drives him to commit irrational acts of violence that undermine his nobleness. So, in the chapters ahead, the reader, one can note the qualities and actions that begin to reveal the tragic flaw in Okonkwo's otherwise admirable actions, words, ideas, and relationship with others. So, at the end of this chapter, Achebe foreshadows the presence of Ikmifiona in Okonkwo's household and also teenage boy's ultimate fate by referring him as a doomed and ill-fated lad. So, one of the most significant social markets of Igbo society is introduced in this chapter. Its unique system of honorific titles. Throughout the book, titles are reference points by which members of the Igbo society frequently compare themselves with one another, especially Okonkwo. These titles are not conferred by higher authorities, but they are acquired by the individual who can afford to pay for them. As a man accumulates wealth, he may gain additional recognition and prestige by taking a title. He may also purchase titles for male members of his family. So, in this process of taking title, the man pays significant initiation fees to the man who already hold the title. So, a Yumofian man can take as many as 4 titles, each apparently more expensive than its predecessor. A man with sufficient money to pay fee begin with the first level, the most common title, but many men can go beyond the first title. Each title taken may be shown by the physical signs such as an anklet or marks on the feet or feet. So, others can determine who qualifies for certain qualities or for certain titles. In this chapter, we are introduced immediately to the complex laws and customs of Okonkwo's clan and its commitment to harmonious relations. For example, the practice of sharing palm and kola nuts is repeated throughout the book to emphasize the peacefulness of the Ebo. When Yunoka's resentful neighbor visits him to collect a debt, the neighbor doesn't immediately address the debt. Instead, he and Yunoka they share a kola nut and pray to their ancestral spirits. Afterward, they converse about community affairs at a great length. So, the customs regulating social relations emphasize their common interest and culture, diffusing possible tension. So, the neighbor further eases the situation by introducing the subject of death throughout a series of Ebo proverbs, thus making use of a shared oral tradition as a concord does when he asks Nwakbi for some seed yams. So, through his emphasis on the harmony and complexity of the Igbo, Achebe contradicts the stereotypical European representations of African as savages. So, in the second chapter, one can begins to see the beliefs and the practices of the Ebo traditions that are particularly significant in the story. For example, the wide division between masculine and feminine actions and responsibilities. There is the respect and success are based on only manly activities and accomplishments like taking care of children, and hands on the other hand are womanly activities. So, in a Conco's determination to be a perfect example of manhood, he begins to reveal the consequences of his fear of weakness, his tragic flaw. Okonkwo hates not only idleness but also gentleness. He demands that his family work as long as he does, without regarding their lesser physical stamina, and he nags and beats his oldest son Novoy. So, Achebe continues weaving traditional elements of Igbo society in this chapter. The marketplace gathering illustrates the Igbo society's reverence for what is manly. For example, the villagers' loyalty to each other when they refer to the women murdered by another village as a daughter of Eumofia. So, this scene also illustrates the ceremonial nature of town meetings, as the speaker shouts the customary greetings to the crowd while turning in 4 different directions. In addition, one learns that Eumophian religious traditions include the worship of wooden objects representing not only one's personal god but also the ancestral spirits to whom one prays and makes sacrifices. So, Achebe continues to use the art of traditional storytelling and references to legends and sayings of the time to illustrate what people believe and respect. For example, like a Konko remembers from his childhood when his father was called a woman, and the proverb when the moon is shining the cripple becomes hungry for a walk represents a belief in the protective quality of moonlight, in contrast with the fear of the darkness. So, in the legend of the old woman with one leg explains in part why the other clans fear Eumofia. So, Achebe challenges the stereotypical representation through the use of language. And he, as Chibe writes in his essay on Joseph Conrad's novella Heart of Darkness, colonialist Europe tended to perceive Africa as a foil or negation of Western culture and values. So, Konke, the protagonist, is like he has bad temper and rules his household with fear. So, Akanko associates Yunoka with weakness and and with weakness he associates femininity. So we see in this chapter about the fear of like what kind of things he has a fear or he was afraid of. In the third lecture in this chapter, Achebe uses the storytelling further, illustrates how Okonko's resentment of his father grew, as well as how his own determination to succeed was tested. The two sides of his characterization as a tragic hero. The separation between a man's word and the woman word in the European culture is again emphasized in this chapter. So there is a separation, as I was saying, that there is a use of storytelling that Achebe illustrates in this chapter, and he also tells about there makes a separation between man and woman in word in European culture. So how in the roles of women in the ritual, wine drinking, and later in the classification of the crops. Cocoa, yams, beans and cassava are considered women crops. In contrast, the yam is identified as the king of crops, a man's crop. So this chapter also illustrates several traditions and traditional ideas and truths that shape day-to-day Ebo life. These principles are often expressed through indirect language and symbols, like in the proverbs, a toad doesn't run in daytime for nothing. There are others. There are others like the lizard that jumped from high Iroko tree to the ground said that he would praise himself if no one else did. You can tell a ripe corn by its look. So these traditional expressions demonstrate the great respect and courtesy that the Ebo people show to one another, because the speaker uses veiled language when making comments about himself. Akonko in the lizard example and Nwakbi in the Nick example. About others, when Igwifi talking about Obiako in the toad example, about the person he is addressing Nwakbi, speaking to Konko in the example of corn, you can tell a ripe corn by its look. So, and about life in general, even to oneself, this symbolic language represents a high level of cultural sensitivity and sophistication. So, an especially significant concept introduced in this chapter is the belief in personal chai at its simplest level. Chai parallels the Western concept of soul, although chai is a more complex idea. The Ebo believe that an individual's fate and abilities for the coming life are assigned to chai, and each individual is given a chai by the creator, means creator Chukwu, at the mention of the conception. Before each reincarnation, the individual bargains for improved circumstances in next life. The chai thus becomes one's personal god that guides one to fulfill the expected destiny. So, on one hand, the individual is ruled by his chai, but on the other hand, only the individual can make the most of the fate planned through the chai. So, notice that Achebe's first name, Chinua, begins with chai. Achebe explained the uses of chai in the following excerpt. When we talk about chai, we are talking about the individual spirit. And so you find the word in all kinds of combination. Chinwe, which is my wife's name, this is by the Achebe, Chinwe Achebe, in which he has given the the significance of the chai or chi, which means chi owns me. So his is Chinua, which is shortened form of an expression that means may a chai fight for me. So his son name is Chidi. Chai is there. So in almost all the names of the family members, in there is always there is always the contribution of the word chai that depicts the individual god. So in the chapter 1, 2 and 3, Achebe highlights the importance of their traditions and their like the language, the use of language in their day-to-day life. So in next the chapter 4 to 6, in this whereas the first few chapters they highlight the complexity and the originality of the Igbo language. In these chapters, Achebe points out another aspect of the Igbo culture that colonialist Europe tended to ignore, the existence of subculture within a given African population. Like each clan has its own stories, and Ikmefuna is an exciting addition to Umofia because he brings with him new and unfamiliar folk tales. So, with the introduction of Ikmefuna, Achebe is able to remind us that the story we are reading is not about Africa, but rather about one specific culture within Africa. So, he just combats the European tendency to see all Africans as one and the same. So, like Umofia, it has 9 clans, and there are many other clans, there are many other tribes, there are many subcultures, there are many languages that are present in Africa, there are many dialects that are present in Africa. So, we cannot just categorize the all African people in one category. So, the religious values of the Igbo emphasize the sheer beliefs of peaceful, harmonious and harmonious relations. Ebo always consult the oracle before declaring a war, for the fair punishment from their gods should they declare war without just cause. So, their religion also emphasizes the individual's obligation to the community. When a conqueror breaks the peace during this sacred week, the priest chastises him for endangering the entire community by risking the earth deity's wrath. So, he refuses Okonko's offer of a colonet, expressing disagreement peacefully. This pairing of potential violence on the interpersonal level reflects the culture's tradition of avoiding violence and war wherever or whenever possible. Moreover, the belief in the Chai and individual's personal god also smooths possible tensions in Igbo community. So, the Chai allows individuals to attribute some portion of their failures and successes to divine influence, this lessening the shame of the former and pride of the later. So, this belief encourages respect between individuals. The men are thus able to settle a dispute between a Konko and a man whom he insults without resorting to personal attacks. Although traditional Igbo culture is fairly democratic in nature, it is also profoundly patriarchal. Wife beating is an accepted practice. Moreover, femininity is associated with weakness, while masculinity is associated with strength. It is no coincidence that the word that refers to titleless man also means woman. A man is not believed to be manly if he cannot control his women. A Konko frequently beats his wives, and the only emotion he allows himself to display is anger. He doesn't particularly feels, but the idleness that they involve makes him feel emasculated. So, a Konko's frustration at this idleness causes him to act violently, breaking the spirit of the celebration. And a Konko's extremely overactive desire to conquer and subdue, along with his profound hatred of all the things feminine, is suggestive of impotence. Though he has children, Okonkwo is never compared to anything thriving or organic. Instead, Achebe always associates him with fire, which consumes but doesn't beget. So, the incident in which he tries to shoot Equifi with his gun is likewise suggestive of importance. After Equifi hints at Konko's inability to shoot properly, Konko proves this inability, failing to hit Equifi importance. Whether or not it is an actual physical condition for him seems to be a characteristic that is related to a Konko's chauvinistic behavior. To secure his manliness, he believes that he should beat the members of his family. Although he may inwardly experience emotions of affection and regret, he cannot show these emotions to others, so he isolates himself through extreme actions. So, at the end of the chapter 4, this chapter refers to the Ignifunus favor story about the ant who holds his coat in splendor and descends dance forever. So, watch for this story to appear under tragic circumstances. The chapter 4, it repeatedly illustrates Konko's volatility. So, it also the amount detail of that about the feast of the new yam just before the annual harvest underscores how closely the life of the community relates to the production of its food. So, the description of household preparation for the festival reveals two significant issues about Igbo culture: the role of women and daughters to keep the household running smoothly and to prepare for social occasions, even though they can hold positions of leadership in village. So, the insignificant impact a wife beating and a nail shooting have on family, as if violence is an acceptable part of the day to day life in the household. So, for the first time in the story, in the chapter 5, Achebe mentions gun because of an outgrowth of Ebo trade with the rest of the world. So, Western technology actually arrived in the village before the Westerns did. So, Umofia was not completely an isolated community. So, the chapter 6, in which in this chapter he shows the wrestling matches that illustrates the value that is placed on physical agility and strength in the Igbo culture. In ways similar to today's sports, the wrestling events, even in their violence, provide victorious player for the spectators who consider the victor heroes and often carry them on their shoulders. Many years earlier, Okonkwo himself sparked his reputation as a powerful man by defeating an opponent who had wrestled undefeated for 7 years. So, this scene also displays the sense of community and kinship among members of the village, as in brief exchange between Akwifi and her neighbor Chialo, the priestess of the Oracle Agabala. The conversation between both includes several puzzling references to Azinma, the daughter of Kongo. How is Achilo? How is my daughter Azinma? Ekwifi, she has been well for some time now. Perhaps she has come to stay. Achilo, I think she has. How old is she now? Ekwifi, she is about 10 years old. Achilo, I think she will stay. They usually stay if they do not die before the age of 6. Ekwifi, I pray she stays. So, except for the marketplace and the gatherings such as the feast of the new yam, the women get little opportunity to visit other villages who are not in their family. However, note the concern that Ekwifi has for Azinma, as well as Chalo's particular fondness for Azinma, whom she calls daughter. This scene implies that Chalo, the priestess, perhaps knows more about Azinma's fate than she is revealing. So that is these are the things that Achibe discussed, the importance of their religion, the importance of certain traditions in this chapter, and he also, and the appearance of the gun does also symbolize that there were the Western technologies, they were already present, they were already arrived in the Africa before the arrival of the Westerners. So in the chapter 7, um, with the killing of Ekmefuna, like Okonko, he disobeys the authority and advice of a clan, and clan elder in killing Ekmefuna. His actions are too close to killing a kinsman, which is a grave sin in Ebo culture. So, with the killing of Ekmefuna, Achibe creates a devastating scene that evokes compassion for the young man and foreshadows the fall of Akonko. Again, in the tradition of tragic hero, along the way, the author sets up several scenes that juxtapose with the death scene. Like the opening scene of the chapter shows the increasing affection and admiration Akonko feels for Ekmefuna as well as for Navoy. On the journey with Ekmefuna and the other men of Umofia, they hear the peaceful dance from a distant clan. So, the murder scene. Okay, in the chapter 2, he comments that the fate of Ekmefuna is a sad story that is still told in Umofia unto this day. So, this observation suggests that the decision to kill Ekmefuna was not a customary one. Before dying, Ekmefuna thinks of Congo as his real father and of what he wants to tell his mother, especially about Congo. So, these elements combined suggest that the murder of Ekmefuna is senseless, even if the killing is in accordance with the oracle and the village decisions. So, the murder scene is the turning point in the novel. Okonko participates in the ceremony for sacrificing the boy after being strongly discouraged, and he delivers the death blow because he is afraid of being thought weak. At a deep emotional level, Okonko kills a boy who could hardly imagine that Okonko was not his real father, someone whom Okonko truly loves as a son. So, Okonko has not only outwardly disregarded his people and their traditions, but he has also disregarded his inner feelings of love and protectiveness. So, this deep abyss between Okonko's divided selves accounts for beginning of his decline. And for the first time in the novel, Okonko's son Noi emerges as a major character who, in contrast to his father, questions the long-standing customs of the clan. So, Achibe begins to show the boy's conflicting emotions, his torn between being a fairly fiercely masculine and a physically strong person to please his father, and allowing himself to cherish values and feelings that Okonko considers feminine and weak. So, in the chapter 8, it begins with in which Okonko's growing separation from his family members as well as from his peers in the village. So, Okonko's friend Obreka, he disapproves of his role in the killing of Acmefuna, and he is represented, Obreka is represented as a moderate, balanced man, and thus serves as contrast to Okonkwo. As Obreka is a man of thought and questioning, while Okonkwo is a man of action without questioning. So, like Navoye, Obreka also questions many traditions and customs of the clan. So, both men seem to agree that manliness doesn't allow a man and his wife to be inseparable and outwardly loving to each other. So, the couple is known to be almost inseparable. A village woman who has died before her husband's death can be publicly announced, but a wife's death soon after her husband's may be a sign that she is guilty of killing him. The couple is known to be almost inseparable in their day-to-day life, a sign of weakness in the husband. According to Okonkwo and Obreka, the village must wait until she is buried before they can officially announce the death of the man who was once a great warrior. So, the example of the economic customs of the village is marriage negotiations for Obreka's daughter, the opening ceremonies, the costume, jewelry of the bride, and the use of sticks and the drinking of the palm wine. They also illustrate the complexity of a European ritual, and the African customs are reminiscent of marriage customs in other cultures, in which the bride's parent pay a dowry or pay the cost of the wedding. Although in Ebo custom, the groom himself pays the bride price. So, such customs refute commonly held notions about primitive and uncivilized African society. However, in the first shadow of the white man appears in the community conversation in this chapter, and it does reveal their lack of direct contact with the white man, but it does represent their aversion to them. So, for this lecture, that is all, and the further lectures, further chapter I'll discuss in the next lectures. So, there isn't any kind of conclusion, or to conclude we can say that until now he has depicted about the significance of the traditions or the customs, and he has also depicted the flaws of the strict customs and the obsession of Okonkwo with manliness, and there are some people who do question the customs. So, I have collected the data from these two sites. You can visit on your own as well. Thank you for your patience. Stay blessed.